Theresa May says she will fight for her leadership with everything she's got after Conservative backbenchers triggered a vote of confidence in her. She will face a ballot of Tory MPs that will take place this evening. The challenge to her premiership was triggered after dozens of backbenchers wrote to the party saying they had lost faith in her. Speaking in Downing Street, Theresa May warned changing leader threatened to delay or even stop Brexit and could put the country's future at risk. Our political correspondent Ian Watson has our first report on another dramatic day here in Westminster.
The first clue that it really wasn't going to be business as usual in Downing Street. A lot was going on under the cover of darkness. The Chief Whip, Julian Smith, who's supposed to know if the Prime Minister has enough support to carry on, left Number 10 late last night, and I spotted him again very early this morning. Soon after, we confirmed that the Prime Minister was facing a vote of no confidence. After dawn broke, the podium appeared. There would be a Prime Ministerial statement, but definitely not a resignation. And when Theresa May emerged, her message to her own MPs was defiant.
There will now be a vote of confidence in my leadership of the Conservative Party. I will contest that vote with everything I've got. A change of leadership in the Conservative Party now will put our country's future at risk and create uncertainty when we can least afford it. Delivering the Brexit people voted for, building a country that works for everyone. I have devoted myself unsparingly to these tasks ever since I became Prime Minister, and I stand ready to finish the job.
But the trouble is, some people want to finish her political career. Watching was Owen Paterson, one of the MPs who signed a letter of no confidence. He said the so-called backstop to avoid a hard border in Ireland was unacceptable.
And her deal is absolutely appalling. We don't leave the customs union. I was in Washington recently. We won't be able to do trade deals. And the backstop is completely unacceptable. And it's quite unnecessary.
And some of her critics point out that under the Conservative Party's rules, if MPs don't dislodge Theresa May today, they're stuck with her beyond Brexit.
Today was inevitable. I put my letter of no confidence in back in July. It's disappointing we're here, but now we've got to deal with it. Colleagues have got to understand when they vote tonight, if the Prime Minister survives, she's got 12 months where she can't be challenged.
So there are many, many reasons, including public trust, as to the reasons why this vote of confidence is very necessary.
Downing Street's strategy is to get as many supportive voices in front of the cameras as possible before tonight's confidence vote.
The Prime Minister is the right person to take us forward. We need to give her our full support. I hope colleagues will.
What this vote today will do is flush out the extremists who are trying to advance a particular agenda which would really not be in the interest of the British people or the British economy.
And her predecessor tweeted his support, saying that any leadership contest would be a distraction. Downing Street will be arguing that there are already consequences from this challenge to the Prime Minister at a time when she should be negotiating with her European partners. She's had to cancel a cabinet meeting today and a meeting with her Irish counterpart, Leo Varadkar. A crucial meeting perhaps to try to get the reassurance that some of her own MPs want over the issue of the Irish backstop or how to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland.
Questions to the Prime Minister!
One thing in her schedule that wasn't cancelled was Prime Minister's questions. She had sidestepped a vote on her deal this week, but Jeremy Corbyn urged her to give MPs a say.
The time for dithering and delay by this government is over. The Prime Minister has negotiated her deal. She's told us it's the best and only deal available. There can be no more excuses, no more running away. Put it before Parliament and let's have the vote.
He should be honest with people. He should be honest with people about his position. He couldn't care less about Brexit. What he wants to do is bring down the government, create uncertainty, sow division and crash our economy. The biggest threat to people and to this country isn't leaving the EU, it's a Corbyn government.
And the SNP went further in their criticisms of the Prime Minister.
The Tory party is in chaos. The Prime Minister is a disgrace for their actions. The reality is that people across Scotland and the UK are seeing this today. Prime Minister, take responsibility, do the right thing, resign.
After PMQs, Theresa May's day is likely to get worse. because at 5 o'clock she effectively reapplies for her own job, talking to MPs in what's called the Backbench 1922 Committee. At 6 o'clock they vote on her future in a secret ballot. If more than half her parliamentary party, 158 MPs, vote against her, she'll have to step aside and a leadership contest begins. The Prime Minister's argument is that a change of leader could take so long, Brexit may have to be postponed. But today she had to postpone her own entry into Parliament when the gates didn't open. Some of her own MPs, of course, want her kept out of office permanently. Ian Watson, BBC News, Westminster.
So all eyes will be on that confidence vote tonight, which takes place between 6 and 8 p.m. 315 Conservative MPs will decide the Prime Minister's future. So what does Theresa May need to do to win tonight's vote amongst her MPs? Well, the Prime Minister needs more than half of the votes of Tory MPs to win. That's 158 votes. If she does win, she'll safeguard her position as leader for another year. But if she loses, what then happens? Well, there would be a leadership contest and she would not be able to stand, but she would remain Minister until a replacement is found. Tory MPs then choose two candidates via a series of ballots to put forward to a vote of ordinary party members around the country. The candidates would be expected to take part in debates before the final voting deadline. If there's only one candidate, then that person becomes the new Conservative leader with no need for a vote from members. The winner of any Tory leadership contest would also be expected to become the new Prime Minister. But there's a worry that this entire process could take weeks, leaving the Brexit process even more uncertain. A leadership contest could delay the House of Commons vote on the withdrawal bill even further, potentially putting the Brexit deadline of the 29th of March in jeopardy. Well, in a moment we'll speak to our Europe reporter Adam Fleming. He's in Brussels to gauge reaction there. But first, our assistant political editor Norman Smith is inside Parliament on what is another remarkable day in politics.
More than remarkable, Simon. This could well be a defining day because Europe is the issue which has devoured successive Tory leaders. It did for Mrs Thatcher. It destroyed the premiership of John Major. It forced David Cameron from office, and tonight we will discover whether this 40-year civil war is about to consume Theresa May. And she has deliberately chosen to up the stakes by making this a vote not just about her leadership but about Brexit itself, saying if she is toppled then Brexit itself is at risk because whoever succeeds her simply won't have the time to negotiate a new deal. They will have to extend Article 50, delay Brexit, and in the uncertainty, who knows, maybe Brexit will never happen. This morning, my sense is, after the initial shock and dismay, there is a growing confidence in Team May that they can win this. Pretty much every key member in the cabinet has now come out and publicly declared their support. The BBC has calculated that around 172 Tory MPs have this morning issued public statements of support. Now, it's a secret ballot, so they may say one thing in public and vote another way. But Mrs May had one of her better Prime Minister's questions. She gets to address the Tory MPs minutes before they vote. Her opponents remain divided over who should stand against her, and intriguingly, in the last few minutes, her spokesman has appealed to Tory MPs, saying tonight is not a vote about who leads the Tory party into the next general election. In other words, Mrs May is saying to those Tory MPs who are worried about her ability to win an election, don't worry, this vote is not about the general election. It is about now, and it is about Brexit.
Norman, thank you very much. Well, let's go to Adam Fleming in Brussels. And not for the first time this week, they're going to be watching their televisions to see what's happening here tonight.
Oh, of course they are, and this is all happening in the run-up to a summit of EU leaders taking place in Brussels tomorrow afternoon. The chair of that meeting, the European Council President Donald Tusk, has just sent out the invitations to leaders triggering the summit, making sure it will definitely happen. And Mrs May is mentioned by name in the invitation, so they're obviously still expecting her to turn up as Prime Minister here tomorrow. Now, the EU does not want to get involved in the domestic political situation where you are, so don't expect anyone to say anything specific anytime soon, although privately I've been told the EU sees the situation as this, that the whole cabinet signed up to the deal. So it is not Theresa May's Brexit deal, it is the UK government's Brexit deal. And you remember in the dim and distant past of yesterday when we were talking about Theresa May trying to get these legal guarantees about when the Irish backstop would be used if it was ever triggered. Well, I've been told there has not been enough time to get any legal official text on paper in time for it to be unveiled at the summit tomorrow, and it's unlikely anything along those lines may even be ready in time for Christmas. But who knows, even that may seem like ancient history in a couple of hours' time.
Adam, thank you very much. So what do people outside Westminster think of the attempt to topple Theresa May? Voters in Worcester elected a Conservative MP last year and voted leave in the EU referendum. Our reporter Catherine Stancheshin has visited the town to gauge their view of the Prime Minister.
Christmas shopping in full swing in Worcester. It's one of only two topics that anyone is talking about. The other, the fact the Prime Minister is facing a rebellion.
Mrs May needs supporting. I'm not happy with people's attitude towards her in the cabinet. If they don't like it, they shouldn't be there. That's how I feel. She needs support.
She was forced into the job, Mrs May was, through Cameron. And give her a chance, for God's sake.
Who else is going to actually do a better job? And I don't know is the answer. I certainly don't think some of the potential new leaders who are going to put themselves forward for the Conservative Party, they certainly wouldn't get my vote. I'm not going to name names, but...
Go on, name names.
Rather tall blonde gentlemen.
Anya Podser has been a jeweller in the city for almost 25 years. She famously made jewellery for Margaret Thatcher, but as a staunch Conservative, says now is not the time to change leaders.
I think they should have supported her more from the start, instead of maybe doing it to their own, for their own good, rather than supporting her in what she's already negotiated. And to come up with such last minute, to not give her support, I find very weak, and we now need to stick together and get on with it.
The Tory majority was cut here in Worcester at the last general election, but it remains a Conservative city in a Conservative county. Many people I've spoken to today remain loyal to the Prime Minister, but for others it's a welcome opportunity for a shake-up. And some people on this ancient street think that's long overdue.
I think it's a time to get rid of the whole Conservative Party. I mean, they've obviously shown that they're not together.
If someone thinks they can do better, then that's what it'll be, but it's obviously going to miss the deadline now. We're not going to be ready for next March, so it's a bit of a mess all round. I think the British people deserve better than that.
There are still those on the streets here and across the country who say they just want to get on with Brexit. Before that, though, could they be about to witness the death of a career? Catherine Stancheshin, BBC News, Worcester.
Well, I'm joined now by the Environment Secretary, Michael Gove. I have to say it's unusual for Number 10 to be ringing around lunchtime bulletins and offering cabinet ministers. Is this because you're quite rattled? Because you've left this very late, haven't you, to express support?
No, I was, as soon as I heard that this leadership election or this vote of confidence had been called, I made it perfectly clear that I support the Prime Minister absolutely. I think she will win this evening. I think she deserves to win. I think we just heard from people in the country who are looking at this spectacle and thinking, why can't you MPs get on with the job, get on with delivering the Brexit that people voted for, and get on for governing in the national interest? And that is what I'm focused on doing, which is why I'm doing everything I can to convince Conservative MPs that we should support the Prime Minister this evening.
Listen to a phone-in this morning, you'll have heard people saying, what is it about the Conservative Party? And Lord Heseltine, former Deputy Prime Minister, saying, what is it about a party that, when it wants to change the song, gets rid of the singer?
Well, we saw actually recently that the Labour Party pitched itself into a leadership contest, and a majority actually of Labour MPs...
But this is about the Conservative
Party. Oh no,
of
course it is. Of course it is. A majority of Labour MPs showed that they did not have confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. I'm convinced that a majority of Conservative MPs, a healthy majority of Conservative MPs, tonight will show that they have confidence in the Prime Minister. I'm also confident, given the conversations that I've had with people in my constituency of Surrey Heath and elsewhere, that people want us to show full support for the Prime Minister, and they want us to get on with making sure that we deliver Brexit on March the 29th of next year, and that we also concentrate on making sure the NHS gets the money it needs, our schools get the support they need, and our environment is enhanced.
An election last year that went wrong, you now rely on the DUP for support in Parliament. a change of mind on Monday, you know only too well. You were, minutes before it was announced, still saying this vote's going ahead. Hasn't she brought this mess upon herself?
No, absolutely not. I think it's absolutely important that we recognise that in 2016 more people voted than have ever voted in any democratic choice in our history, and they voted to leave the European Union. The Prime Minister is working hard every day both to honour that referendum result and to do so in a way which makes sure that our economy remains strong as well as our democracy remaining vital. And I think that we should put to one side any of the criticisms that you sometimes hear from commentators and concentrate on the job. And I know that the overwhelming majority of people in Britain want to make sure that we have a government that delivers on the mandate and the instructions that they have given.
And you think she'll win?
I'm absolutely sure the Prime Minister will win, and I think the sooner that all of this is put to bed and the sooner that we unite behind the Prime Minister, the better for the country.
Michael Gove, thank you very much. We'll have more at the end of the bulletin from here at Westminster, but now back to you, Clive.
Simon, many thanks for that. It is 17 minutes past 1, our top story this lunchtime. And Theresa May vows to fight an attempt by her own backbenchers to remove her from power in a no-confidence vote tonight.
Sir Graham Brady has confirmed that he has received 48 letters from Conservative MPs, so there will now be a vote of confidence in my leadership of the Conservative Party. I will contest that vote with everything I've got.
Coming up later on BBC News, Liverpool and Tottenham secure qualification to the knockout stage of the Champions League. A great save from goalkeeper Alisson, ensuring Liverpool got the result they needed against Napoli, leaving 4 British clubs in the draw for the last 16.
Now, France is on the highest state of alert as police continue the hunt for a gunman who shot dead 3 people at a Christmas market in Strasbourg yesterday. 13 others were wounded, 8 of them seriously. The suspect has been named as Cherif Chekat, a 29-year-old petty criminal from Strasbourg, and prosecutors say he shouted Allahu Akbar, or "God is great," during the attack. Security forces have stepped up checks on the German border amid fears he may have fled France. Here's our Europe correspondent, Damien Grammaticus.
This is a city now on alert. Hundreds of police on a manhunt. The site of the attack was Strasbourg's Christmas market, thronged with people when the gunman struck. He simply walked into the narrow old alleys and opened fire. Within minutes, the heart of Strasbourg was empty. People taking shelter hid in shops and bars, barricaded inside. While for almost an hour, security forces and the attacker exchanged fire. 30 or 40 minutes, Rubin says, the shooting went on for. He filmed police scrambling to take cover. He says he knew the attacker, a local man of Algerian origin with a record of petty crime. Yes, he was in prison here and in Germany too, he says. Ali told us the gunman was Cherif Chekat. He knew him, both had spent time in prison for theft. He saw him armed with a Kalashnikov, shooting at people on the street and up in their homes. I saw people running, he says, police running too. Everyone was saying it's gunshots. So now hundreds of police and soldiers are searching for him. The nearby border with Germany is being patrolled. And Strasbourg's famous Christmas market has been shuttered. All business stopped.
The Christmas market is one of the big attractions that draws visitors to Strasbourg. We don't know when this one will reopen. France has been put on the highest level of alert. And the government says that security will now be stepped up at Christmas markets across the country. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Strasbourg.
The body of the murdered British backpacker Grace Millane has been returned to her family after being formally identified. The 22-year-old went missing in New Zealand on December the 1st, days after arriving in the country on a round-the-world trip. Her body was later found on the outskirts of Auckland on Sunday. A 26-year-old man has appeared in court charged with her murder. A BBC investigation has found evidence suggesting the Democratic Unionist MP Ian Paisley was given a complimentary holiday at a luxury Maldives resort months after he defended the country's government. Earlier this year, he was suspended from the Commons for failing to declare 2 holidays in Sri Lanka. He has denied any wrongdoing. The DUP says the party will investigate the latest allegations. The Scottish Government will announce its tax and spending plans today. It's promised measures to protect public services, including health and education, and to boost the economy. But the SNP needs the support of other parties for the budget to pass. Now, he was once Donald Trump's lawyer and loyal Mr. Fix-It, but today Michael Cohen is due to be sentenced
The pit bull lawyer and fixer once said he would take a bullet for his longtime boss, but no longer. The former loyalist is now himself a danger to the president. The legal tension has been building for months. Back in April, the FBI, in a dramatic raid, seized thousands of items from Cohen's hotel.
There is a case, and that is completely separate from the special counsel investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Michael Cohen met with Robert Mueller 7 times and gave him valuable information about contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia. So the big unremaining answered question is whether President Trump will be implicated in that.
Okay, Neda, thank you for that. Neda Tawfiq there live in New York. Now, debt charities are warning that some of the poorest families will have to rely on food banks over Christmas because of changes to the benefit system. From today, all new claimants across the UK will be signed up to the government's flagship welfare reform, Universal Credit. Ministers say there's no reason for anyone to be without money over the festive season because advance payments are available. Here's David Rhodes.
Erin is one of over 1 million people already on Universal Credit. With Christmas coming, this single mum says she doesn't know how she'll buy her son a present.
Everyone keeps saying, well, your priority is to feed your son, but then you've got to think, well, he's going to think he's been naughty if Santa doesn't bring him any presents on Christmas morning.
Erin says she's experienced delays and anguish because of universal credit.
When I've paid my bills and my rent, I've got £26 of my wages left. So I've used food banks a lot. And then obviously if I've got no gas or electric, then I've had to sleep at other people's houses or send my little boy to someone else's house so that at least he's got some warmth and electric and things.
Since 2016, the government has been rolling out universal credit to different parts of the country. From today, the rollout is complete. Anyone making a new claim for one of these 6 benefits will automatically go on to universal credit. The idea is to simplify the system, combining 6 different benefits into one monthly mean-tested payment.
Welcome to Christians Against Poverty. David speaking. How can I help?
Charities say universal credit has pushed people into debt and poverty.
In the last 6 months, we've seen a 30% rise in the number of people saying universal credit is the main cause of their debt. They're struggling with things like the rent arrears and the council tax they haven't been able to pay.
The number of people in work in the UK is now at a record high, and the government says universal credit works for the vast majority of people and that no one should go without money over Christmas because advance benefit payments are widely available. But for claimants like Erin, she feels December could be a long and uncertain month. David Rhodes, BBC News, North Yorkshire.
Now, the future of Team Sky, one of the most successful cycling squads in recent history, is in doubt. Sky, the broadcaster, has announced it's withdrawing its support from 2019. In the last 8 years, Team Sky has won 6 Tour de France yellow jerseys, making riders like Sir Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome household names. Well, our sports correspondent David Ornstein is at the Manchester Velodrome for us this afternoon. David, how much of a shock is all this, the news that Sky is pulling the plug?
It will be a shock to many, Clive. This is the base until relatively recently where Team Sky built much of their success. It was where it was born. It was where they masterminded taking road cycling by storm, really. Since their formation in January 2011, they had the far-fetched aim of becoming the first team to win the Tour de France with a British cyclist, and they delivered, and how, with Chris Froome most prominently, but also Sir Bradley Wiggins and Geraint Thomas only last summer. There have, of course, though, been questions also about Team Sky. Many find them controversial, many find them unpopular, especially in France, but also they have faced allegations of cheating, of crossing ethical lines, which for a team that was set up on the basis of being whiter than white amid cycling's long and murky history of doping, has seen their reputation tarnished for many. Now, the timing is interesting. Recently, Sky was taken over by Comcast, and that cut the crucial link to James Murdoch, who was one of the driving forces behind Team Sky. As you said, this will shock many, especially the riders and the staff as well. Team Sky only recently announced a new contract, a lucrative new deal for Geraint Thomas, and so it will promote questions as well. Where do they go from here? Can they find another sponsor who will be able to fund them anywhere near the level that Team did? They weren't just the sponsor, but also the owner. So really, this is the end of what was an historic era.
OK, David, thank you for that. David Ornstein there at the Manchester Velodrome. Now, let's return to Simon at Westminster for the latest on tonight's vote of confidence in Theresa May. Simon.
Thanks, Clive. Yes, a difficult day for the Prime Minister, and it's not going to get any easier because she's going to be addressing members of her own party at the 1922 committee. That's happening at 5 o'clock. Let's talk to our assistant political editor, Norman Smith, who's inside Parliament. And what must she say to get through tonight?
Well, she will have that opportunity to make a last-minute appeal before Tory MPs go and vote, and her supporters say a majority of just 1 is enough for her. I think that is very questionable. She will want a solid majority, and I think privately her supporters are confident of getting that. We heard from the Health Secretary, Matthew Hancock, this morning, who predicted, quote, a strong majority for Mrs May. If she manages to secure that, then this could yet rebound to her advantage. It would enable her to cement her grip on this fractious, divided party. It would bolt and her in position for another year, because you cannot launch another vote of confidence for another 12 months. But above all, it could vanquish the Brexiteers and significantly enhance her chances of getting a controversial Brexit deal through Parliament. But, you know, this vote will hinge not on the Brexiteers or on the party loyalists. It'll hinge on those quiet, middle ground Tories who we don't hear from very often. And what they say in public and how they vote in private may be very different.
Norman Smith in the Palace of Westminster, thank you very much, and full coverage of the vote here.
Thank you very much, John. Yes, welcome back to a BBC News special at Westminster on another dramatic day at Parliament. In around 5 hours' time, Theresa May is going to be facing that vote of confidence in her leadership. The ballot was triggered this morning when the threshold of 48 letters calling for a vote of confidence in her leadership was reached. Mrs May has warned that Brexit will be delayed or even stopped if Conservative MPs fail to back her. So what can we expect later? Well, she is going to be addressing the 1922 committee at 5 o'clock in what will be her last chance to convince any undecided Conservative MPs to back her as leader. It's worth pointing out, I'll tell you the figures in a moment on how many have publicly said they'll support her. Shortly after she finishes speaking, the ballot will be held, and that's going to be some point between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. with the results announced soon afterwards. In order to win, Mrs May needs to secure 158 votes. That's half of her MPs plus one. If that happens, she'll be immune from a further challenge for a year, but if she loses, there'll be a leadership contest and she will be barred from standing. Well, senior members of the Cabinet have been quick to throw their support behind the Prime Minister. The Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, has said she is the best person to make sure we actually leave the EU on the 29th of March. The International Trade Secretary, Liam Fox, has said it's the wrong time for a leadership contest, saying the country expects stability and not damaging division. The prominent Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was one of the first to submit a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister, said the country needs a new leader and it's time for Mrs May to resign. The former Prime Minister, David Cameron, has tweeted he's urged Conservative MPs to back Mrs May in the vote. So just to bring you up to date then with the latest that we have, 174 Tory MPs have publicly said they will be supporting Theresa May later. It's been said many times so far today, it is a secret ballot, and whether that means they actually deliver when they go to put their name down and in support of her remains to be seen. It's also worth saying that the Prime Minister's aides are telling journalists that Theresa May does not believe the vote today is about who leads this party into the next election, but it's about whether to change the Prime Minister now. So there is speculation around whether she might say when she speaks to Tory MPs at 5 o'clock that actually she does not intend to stay as leader even if she wins the vote tonight for the duration. Well, let's talk more about what is going on and what might happen from here with the SNP's Justice and Home Affairs spokesperson, Joanna Cherry. Well, we spoke the other day, a lot has changed, keeps changing. Yeah. In terms of where we go from here, if Theresa May does not remain as leader of the party, she says that's taking us closer to a no-deal Brexit or potentially no Brexit at all. How do you see it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important that people focus on the issue here, which is not the internal infighting and the chaos of the Tory party, but what is going to happen about Brexit. We were supposed to have a vote on the deal that the Prime Minister told us was the best deal that she could deliver on Tuesday evening, and she pulled that vote because she knew that she couldn't win it. And she needs to bring that vote back to the floor of the House next week, before Christmas, to get some certainty on whether it can be passed or not. Now,
it cannot be passed.
Exactly, it cannot be passed, so therefore we have to look at the other options. And as she herself is now acknowledging, the other options aren't just no deal, there is an option to revoke Article 50 altogether. Now, what I would like to see is Article 50 extended in order to put in place a government who will hold a people's vote between Theresa May's deal and the option to stay. The Court of Justice case in which I was involved in earlier this week, having established that it's possible for us to stay in the European Union on the same terms and conditions. But I think it's vital that today we don't get overly focused on the Tory infighting infighting, and instead MPs should be thinking about their constituents and the jobs and the living standards of people across these islands, which will be affected by Theresa May's deal. That's not my word for it. The government's own analysis shows that the economy will take a big hit as a result of her deal, and it will be even worse in the event of no deal. But people now know that the choice isn't deal or no deal. They know that there's a third choice, and a choice to remain in the European Union on the terms and conditions which we currently enjoy. Now, I know the majority of people across the UK voted to leave. People in Scotland, which I represent, and Northern Ireland didn't. But the fact of the matter is that when they voted to leave 2.5 years ago, they did so on the back of promises which have subsequently proved to be undeliverable. And I believe people deserve a second vote on the facts this time.
If it goes to the country with a referendum, it could result in people saying, actually, we know exactly what you're saying and we want a no-deal Brexit.
Well, the polls show very clearly that Scotland and Northern Ireland have remained solidly Remain. Scotland has gone up from 62% Remain to nearer 70%. Interestingly, polls produced by a number of organisations seem to suggest a movement towards staying in the European Union in England and Wales. Of course, we haven't had a campaign yet, and we need to have a campaign on the facts. But what I would say, as Scottish National Party spokesperson, is that if there is a second referendum, and if England is minded to vote leave and Scotland votes Remain again, then Scotland must be allowed the opportunity to exercise the mandate the Scottish Parliament has for a second independence referendum, and to let the Scots choose whether they want to go with Brexit Britain or be an independent member state in the European Union with the sort of equality and status that Ireland has and that we've all seen throughout the negotiations.
In terms of where we are now politically, the SNP has been saying it would like to see actually a challenge to the government, vote no confidence in the government. That remains the case.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking cross-party in this. I think it's vital to understand that cross-party working is what's required here. Of course, overnight, the Tories have enrolled their own motion of no confidence in their Prime Minister, and some would argue we have to see how that develops as the day goes on. But I mean, it's clear that Parliament doesn't have confidence in this Prime Minister. If it had confidence in the Prime Minister, she would her vote. And it's clear that her own party don't have confidence in her. As you said earlier, we'll need to see the figures, but I think it's really important not to make this just about the infighting in the Tory party. The infighting in the Tory party, David Cameron's referendum, is what's brought us to where we are now. MPs from all parties need to work in the interests of the four nations of these islands to try and pull back from the brink and protect jobs and living standards.
Joanna Cherry, thank you very much. Let's go to our assistant political editor, Norman Smith, who's in Westminster for us. Where are you, Norman? Are you in Downing Street? Oh, no, you're in the lobby. Hi there. So 174 Tory MPs publicly saying, at least, that they'll support the Prime Minister. Will she be taking much heart from that?
I think she'd be wise to be cautious because, let's be honest, it's a secret ballot, and whatever Tory MPs may say in public, they can do something very differently in private. All of which said, I do think those around her are confident that she is going to win tonight's vote, but by how much? Her team say one vote is enough. I suspect they will be hoping for quite a bit more than that. But let's mull all that over with the Conservative Kemi Badenoch, the SNP Sammy Wilson, and Labour Seema Malhotra. Sorry, apologies. How far does Mrs May need to win, and to win big, not just by one vote, but a big, commanding victory?
She only needs to win by one vote, and I think a lot of the people who are talking about her winning by commanding victory are people who are trying to raise expectations, who want to see a change in leadership. That's not something I want. I believe that a win is a win, even if it is a small win, and given the polarisation that we're seeing within Parliament at the moment, it's very hard to be asking for commanding majorities when we know how difficult this issue is.
But isn't the danger, if she doesn't win by a big majority, this ongoing civil war in the Tory party will continue to fester?
I disagree. The ongoing civil war in the party, as you describe it, I wouldn't quite call it that, will be resolved once we get a deal that the House can vote on and get through. That's what we need to focus on, not a leadership election at such a critical juncture. It's very bad timing.
Sammy Wilson, I'm presuming you must be hoping Theresa May is toppled, given all your party have sort of said about her deal.
Well, no matter how you try to engage me in it, we have made it quite clear we are not members of the Conservative Party, we would not be arrogant enough to suggest who should be the leader of the Conservative Party. But what we do, and what we have said, is that there's a certain policy which we expect the Conservative Party to follow, regardless of who the leader is, and if that policy is not being followed, then they will not have our support. And, you know, there was a promise made to us by this current Prime Minister that she would deliver on her own manifesto to the people of the United Kingdom as a whole, and to the promises to the people of Northern Ireland in particular not to break up the Union. Clearly this deal does not do that. So even if she gets through tonight's vote, she then has to bring this back to the House of Commons, and it is quite clear the reason why we haven't had the vote is she knows that there is no majority for it in the House of Commons, so that's the most important hurdles in her leadership.
Let me put it to you, she is inextricably tied up with this deal, and therefore if she remains leader, the basic shape of the deal will remain as is, a deal which you are implacably opposed to.
And a deal which Parliament is implacably opposed to, so she could be a leader unable to deliver her policy. If she becomes a leader able to deliver her policy, then she will not be delivering it with our support.
And you will end your agreement with the Tory party? You would vote against it in a vote of confidence if she secures backing for this deal?
I don't think anyone in the United Kingdom would expect us to connive in our removal from the United Kingdom. I mean, no other part of the United Kingdom would tolerate their territory having to regard the rest of the United Kingdom as a third country. To have trade disrupted between their part of the United Kingdom and the rest of the United Kingdom, especially when they were so dependent upon that for their market, and to be excluded from future UK trade deals. So, I mean, if this deal goes through and the Prime Minister continues to try and deliver it, she'll not be delivering with our support.
Seema Malhotra, I'm not quite sure how Labour view this. Do you want Mrs May to stay, or do you want her to go, or do you just not care, or what?
Well, I think it's time for the government to go. I think we've made that very clear, and the reason is this. We started this week with yet another Brexit Monday. We had the Prime Minister and her ministers going out briefing something over the weekend that suddenly changed on Monday, resulted in disarray in Parliament and a disenfranchisement of Parliament in having a vote on the deal. But this is just the latest in a long line of failures by Theresa May. Last year losing her majority, now losing the confidence in many ways of Parliament, losing control over the Brexit process, and now control over her party. I think what's going to be really important now is that we keep a focus on what this is all about, which is the future of our country. It is absolutely vital that Theresa May comes back next week to Parliament, that we see a conclusion of the debate and we see a vote. If her deal is voted down, then it is for Parliament to then say what should happen next, and we should start that process as quickly as possible because time is running out.
But let me put it to you, unlike Sammy Wilson, you should actually want Theresa May to stay in position, because if she doesn't, there is a danger her successor simply will not have the time to negotiate a new deal, and you slip remorselessly towards no deal, exactly what you don't want.
Well, I would like Theresa May to go, because, and I would like the government to go. I think you know, that is important for us to say. How do we settle this? This is not a government that is at all functional, and we need a government that is going to be negotiating properly in the interests of the country and with the country. This is a consequence of Theresa May's own choices over the last 2 years. She's had a negotiation for 2 years with part of her own party, not even her whole party, let alone Parliament or the country. And jobs, our economy, and so much more is at stake. If this means extending Article 50, then I think that is inevitably a place that we're going to reach.
You heard Sammy Wilson there, again stressing his complete opposition to the deal as it's currently constructed, even if Mrs May wins tonight. Is this not just crisis delayed until the meaningful vote in the new year, where the parliamentary arithmetic still looks impossible? May opening up the potential of a shattering defeat on the core part of her Brexit policy?
Well, I think the point about the parliamentary arithmetic is the inescapable one, whether you're talking about leadership elections or agreements and so on. And it's going to be very difficult to keep many people on side, whichever way it is, whether it's people's vote, no deal, this deal, etc. I'm very sad that Sammy doesn't feel that he'd be able to support us through this, but I think everyone has got to act in good conscience. At the moment, the issue is around the backstop. That's what the Prime Minister is trying to seek reassurances on, and we just have to give her some time to do that. Otherwise, we're just going to repeat this cycle with whoever's leader, with whichever party's in government. I mean, just listening to Seema, it's quite clear that they don't have the answers either. It's very easy to speak in platitudes, but this is a very difficult problem that to solve on behalf of the country, and I think the Prime Minister is doing her very best.
Okay, briefly, for all of you, do you expect Mrs May to survive tonight, Sammy Wilson?
I think that the advantage is on her side. She's got the huge payroll vote. She also has the fact that many people don't know who the likely successor would be, so the advantage is on her side, but who knows what the outcome would be.
Seema Mohat.
All the reports suggest that she may come through this, but I think what's clear is that while she's in office, she's not in power, and we've got to move on. Parliament's got to have a vote, and we've got to move forward to break this logjam.
I think I know your answer.
Yes, that is my answer.
Okay, there's a agreement actually. All three seem to think that Mrs May will survive. That seems to be the consensus at the moment. But remember, it is a private ballot, so what MPs choose to do when they put their cross one way or the other will be in private, and so anything really could still happen.
Yes, we will know by 9 o'clock. Norman, thank you. The sun has come out here in Westminster. It's turning into a really beautiful day. Whether the news that 174 Tory MPs have publicly said that they'll support Theresa May is making her feel any sunnier, we don't know, because as Norman says, it's a secret ballot in the end. So we'll only know at 9 o'clock exactly what the outcome is going to be. Coming up at 3:30, we'll bring you Ask This. It's your chance to ask an expert any question you've got on the upcoming confidence vote in Theresa May. So if you've got any questions you want us to ask on your behalf, do get in touch via text on 61124. Email askthis@bbc.co.uk or tweet #BBCAskThis, and we'll try to get you the answers. And of course, full coverage and reaction throughout the day here in Westminster. Earlier today, Theresa May stood outside Downing Street and said she will fight the vote tonight with everything she has got. This is what she had to say, and a warning, this next item contains flashing images.
Sir Graham Brady has confirmed that he has received 48 letters from Conservative MPs, so there will now be a vote of confidence in my leadership of the Conservative Party. I will contest that vote with everything I've got. I have been a member of the Conservative Party for over 40 years. I've served it as an activist, councillor, MP, Shadow Minister, Home Secretary, and now as Prime Minister. I stood to be leader because I believe in the Conservative vision for a better future, a thriving economy with nowhere and nobody left behind, a stronger society where everyone can make the most of their talents, always serving the national interest. And at this crucial moment in our history, that means securing a Brexit deal that delivers on the result of the EU referendum, taking back control of our borders, laws and money, but protecting jobs, our security and our precious union as we do so. Through good times and bad over the last 2 years, my passionate belief that such a deal is attainable, that a bright future lies ahead for our country, has not wavered, and it is now within our grasp. I spent yesterday meeting Chancellor Merkel, Prime Minister Rutte, President Tusk and President Juncker to address the concerns that MPs have with the backstop, and we are making progress. I was due to travel to Dublin this afternoon to continue that work, but will now remain here in London to make the case for my leadership with my parliamentary